Program and to our Monday panel of political strategists. With me here in Canberra, Grahame Morris from Barton Deakin, and in the Sky News Centre, Bruce Hawker, the former federal Labor strategist. Welcome to you both. I want to kick off by going through some of the polls. A couple of new ones out today. In fact, this afternoon, the Essential survey released. Have a look at the numbers there. Labor's primary vote has dropped down 1 point to 34%. That's against the Coalition steady on 47%. I think that's the news poll numbers we're looking at there. Can we please bring up the Essential numbers? They have 34% for Labor, the Coalition on 47%. After preferences, the Essential poll... No, it doesn't look like we're getting the Essential poll. There it is. Yeah. All right, 34% to 47%. And the two-party preferred result, a 10-point gap, 55 to the Coalition, 45 to Labor. An interesting question, too, in the Essential survey on how you're going to vote in the Senate, which is looming as a very interesting battle indeed. Would you vote the same in the House and the Senate? 67% yes. Different party, only 9%, and don't know, 24%. Now let's take a look at the news poll results. Today's figures, firstly, you can see that Labor's dropped down 1 point, which statistically isn't all that significant, but it is below the 30% barrier, 29% now. The Coalition just down 1 point to 48%. After preferences, news poll has the split wider than the Essential poll, 57 to 43, so a 14-point gap in the news poll. And then, as preferred Prime Minister, Tony Abbot is opening up now his strongest lead over Julia Gillard, 45 to 33% as preferred Prime Minister. I also want to show you a set of figures, news poll figures from 3 years ago. Today is the third anniversary of Julia Gillard taking over as Prime Minister. She said that a good government had lost its way. Have a look at what the figures were back then in news poll. You can see that the primary vote had Labor at 35% to the Coalition's 40%, so trailing, but only by 5 points. And have a look at this. After preferences, Labor was in front, just 52 to 48%. This was when Kevin Rudd was leader. And the preferred Prime Minister results, Kevin Rudd had a comfortable 9-point lead over Tony Abbot back then 3 years ago. So, Bruce Hawker, that was then. This is now. What's your latest feeling on what these polls mean, and in particular for the leadership?
Oh, well, they're a grim story, aren't they, David? No one would try to tell you anything other than that. They really fill people with despair, I think, because on those numbers, Labor would lose 35, 40 seats perhaps in the parliament, which is just devastating. We'd never had anything like that before. So it's up to the caucus, obviously, to decide what they're going to do about this, if anything. Certainly not up to Kevin Rudd. I know there's been a lot of talk about, Kevin Rudd should challenge, Kevin Rudd should challenge. Well, actually, that's a decision for the caucus to make. What happens?
No, surely it's a decision for Kevin Rudd whether he challenges, isn't it? If he wants the leadership challenge.
Well, the usual thing in situations like this is for party elders to go to the leader and say, look, these numbers are really untenable. It's time that you moved on and made way for somebody else, so that you have a seamless transition. That's what we had with Hawke to Keating, and Keating went on to win an election after that. So,
and in the event that they're not doing that, which there's no sign they will,
well, then I think it's speculation on speculation. And although we're all turning into professional speculationists, I don't think I want to go down that path, David. But I do think that there's been a lot of talk. And you're referring to people who've been talking to you. We certainly have had ministers come out, like Greg Combet and Gary Gray saying, oh, Kevin Rudd should challenge. And Greg, for some reason, said that Kevin reckoned he had the numbers, which he never said. So I think there's been a lot of talk around this by ministers and others on and off the record, which has only served to inflame the problem. But I think if anything were to happen, it should happen by way of a delegation rather than by a rather unpleasant confrontation in the caucus, which wouldn't help anybody.
Grahame, what do you expect will happen this week, and do you agree that it's not really up to Kevin Rudd?
Look, the Australian cricket team today sacked their coach because he couldn't get the best out of a very ordinary team. On that basis, Labor Party's captain coach should go. Look, today there's been a treasure hunt all over Parliament House. The Labor Party has been searching for a backbone, but they can't find it. Simon Crean had it a few months ago, but the Labor Party now can't find the Simon Crean backbone. Look, we all know what should happen. Kevin Rudd should challenge. He should win. He'll only win by a little bit, but he should win. He should junk the carbon tax, the mining tax. He should say sorry for the boat thing. Then he should get rid of that stupid decision to have an election on September the 14th, drag it out to November, go to the group of 8, run around the electorates, say, you look at me, look at me. That's what should happen.
Well,
I've been talking to some of his senior mates, and they are not looking forward to what's happening in the next day. They are shaking their heads about what happened 3 years ago, saying that it was a tragedy, it should never have come to that. And you remember, David, it was probably Sky's great moment this time 3 years ago, where just about everybody who had a TV set and could get it were glued to this program, and it made Sky. But look, yeah, you know, it just seems to me that at the moment there is nobody within the Labor Party who can organise this, and by default, the Prime Minister at the end of the week, I think, stays there, but very, very damaged.
Well, I'm certainly not going to interrupt you while you're giving us a wrap, but looking at the Labor Party, Bruce, are you, just to get back to this, are you saying Kevin Rudd should stick to his pledge and not challenge?
Yeah, I think that the most appropriate way for this thing to be resolved is through senior people in the party making a decision as to whether they're going to call on the Prime Minister or not.
But in the event that doesn't happen, you're saying he shouldn't break his word and challenge?
Yeah, I think it would be a much better way to go if there was going to be a change, for it to be done in the way in which we're used to these things happening, and that is through, you know, a quiet discussion rather than a rather unpleasant confrontation in their caucus.
I'm sure that would be his preference, but if it doesn't come to that, and the signs are it won't, there will be some of his supporters, and you know, I've been speaking to them today, wanting him to do the deed. It's a question of whether he's willing to break that pledge.
Well, undoubtedly there would be some people who would say that, but you know, that all assumes that he has got a majority support inside the caucus, and as I said before, he's never made that claim. Others have made it on his behalf, people who are supporters of the Prime Minister, I might say. But so I don't think you should assume that you know, that the numbers are necessarily there for whatever reason. You know, everyone knows my position. I've always been a strong supporter of Kevin Rudd, and we also know, on the basis of those polls that we were seeing before, that if he was to lead the party, then immediately would be on a 50-50 footing with the opposition, which is just remarkable. But you know, as people keep telling me, I'm not one who has a vote in this. The caucus does, and they have to make up their minds about these things.
Bruce, do you think he's got the passion, the drive to be Prime Minister again of this country and to lead that rabble that we call a Labor Party? Or is he just really, really good at revenge?
Well, the invective aside, David and Graham, I think he's somebody who has got a lot of fire in his belly still. We see it every day that he's out on the hustings with MPs. You've heard Richard Marles talking about that before. I've seen it personally, the way in which he relates to people. He's brimful of ideas. He's somebody who, you know, has still got a lot to offer. He was removed from the Prime Ministership quite inappropriately. Everybody basically agrees with that proposition now, but whether they're prepared to go back to him, I don't know. If he were the Prime Minister, I know this though, that he would take it right up to Tony Abbot. The opposition knows that. That's why they're going out of their way to try to attack him now and drag him down in anticipation of something happening.
We are going to run out of time soon, but I do want to get your thoughts, both of you, on the 43rd Parliament, which of course wraps up at the end of this week. Graham, highlights, lowlights, how have you seen this Parliament?
Well, that hung parliaments in Australia don't work. They've given us a mess. That the excitement of our first female Prime Minister has been a flop. And that the discipline of a united opposition works. And I think on the upside, the disability insurance scheme is an idea whose time has come. But essentially, this parliament has delivered probably the worst Prime Minister and the second worst government.
Well, not an entirely rosy view of the 43rd Parliament. Bruce, what do you reckon? How have you seen this? It has been a difficult hung parliament for the government, but what are your thoughts on it as it draws to a close?
I think it's been very tough, and as Grahame says, it's very difficult to make much headwind in a hung parliament. I think we've had a particularly aggressive opposition leader who dived to the bottom at every opportunity he's had. That's evidenced by a real low, I think, and that's a failure to reach consensus around asylum seekers. The government did have and does have a solution in Malaysia, which the opposition could sign up to tomorrow, but they won't do it. That, I think, has been indicative of the level that the opposition's been prepared to go to keep the government down. I think that is a very sad reflection on politics in this country. On the high side, I think the Gonski reforms, if they come about, are very important for Australia's future competitiveness internationally and for our own kids' education. And, of course, the NDIS is a great social reform which only a Labor government has got the foresight and the ability to deal with.
I'm sure we'll be spending plenty of time looking back over this 43rd Parliament in the weeks and months ahead, but we'll have to wrap things up for now. Bruce Hawker and Grahame Morris, thank you both very much for joining us again this afternoon.
Pleasure.